Welcome to the Radical Rhythm podcast. Today I have a guest, Tami Muller from Miami and New York and Israel and Miami. And I am
New York.
thrilled to let our audience know that she has a book out. It's called How to Be on a Diet for 45 Years and Never Be Thin. And currently it's in Hebrew, but it's being translated to English. Tami, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Toni, for inviting me.
So let's tell the audience a little bit about your background. I was fascinated that you spent over 30 years in the corporate world, and now you've made in my mind, a drastic shift. Maybe to you, it's not so drastic. You want to talk a little bit about your corporate background and the decision you made to change?
Absolutely. So I have a bachelor degree in economics and I have a master's degree in business. And for more than 30 years, I was working in business development, marketing director, sales manager, everything that has to do in the business world. And I was good at that. I can't say that I loved it, but I had 3 kids and I didn't ask myself if I love it too much. And actually, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years ago, when I was here in a funeral, in one of the funerals in the eulogy, somebody spoke about, how the person who passed away, how they changed their lives and how they influenced their community. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what are they going to say about me? They're going to say that I was a marketing mogul, that I was amazing in sales. And I knew because I really knew years before that I wanted to do something different, but I just didn't have the courage to do it. And at that moment, I think I knew that I was really going to do it. And it took me probably another couple of months to find what I wanted to do. And then I left the corporate world and I started my own journey.
In the field of happiness, I have never heard of the field or discipline of happiness. I had to do a lot of research, Tami, before our show today.
Oh.
How did you pick happiness as a profession?
No, it's funny. One of my visits to Israel, I have a good friend. He was actually my supervisor in the army. I was a soldier. And we stayed friends years and years and years later. And he knows me since I was 19. And he told me, why don't you go back and study to be a happiness coach? I looked at him and I said, have you lost your mind completely? Me, happiness coach, what is it? And he said, listen, it's a very, up and coming area and people are studying it. And actually, I'm telling you, Toni, that today they do a bachelor degree, master's degree, and PhD in the science of happiness in the university, in Centenary University in New Jersey. Dr. Tal Ben Shahar, who was my mentor and my teacher, he's doing all this. It's in science. And I came home and I was researching it. I'm like, and this is when I found the Happiness Studies Academy and Dr. Tal Ben Shahar. And I went to study with him. And the first time that I heard what he has to say, I felt like, wow, I came home. I knew that this is something that I always lived by. I didn't know anything about it. But when I studied about it, I realized that to everything I did in life, there's a name and there's science and there are tools and I can actually teach others. Because for me, it was kind of natural, but I can teach others to be happier. That's what I do.
Wow. It sounds like a great job, being a happy coach, being happy.
I
So,
love it.
yeah. So tell me about the field of business. I've been in academia my whole life and have
Mhm.
little experience with corporations. So when I think of corporate culture, I think of maybe I go back to the 1950s. I think of everybody in gray suits and hats and everything gray and dreary and stressful and shaking your hands to the bottom line. Business has to be
It's
happier
funny.
than that. Please
When
tell me that, Tami.
when you say corporate, I didn't work in the corporate really. I worked in the business world, but not really so much in the corporate. I'll explain this to you. My father actually came to the United States from Israel when he was 50 because he wanted to start a business in America. This was his dream. And he started a business in the environmental remediation, it was asbestos abatement in those days. And we came to visit. I didn't plan to stay here. We came to visit, and my father passed away very suddenly when he was 59 years old. And he was healthy, and he just passed away. And we stayed here with the business. So it was a family-owned business. We had 40 employees, so it was it was a nice business, but it wasn't like this corporate America. We owned the business. And I remember that when my father was still alive and I wanted to get into the business, he told me, "This is not for you. It has no glamour. Well, construction and environmental remediation. You need something more glamorous." And when he passed away and I got into the business, and I remember I won a very big award, once. And when I gave my speech, I said, this is glamorous for me. I took this business and I made it my own. And I used to invite people as a director of marketing and business development. I used to invite people to my house for dinners, for cooking classes. And I made it completely my own. Nobody is like, what is she doing? Nobody ever saw anything like that. And it was so beneficial because I would get work, the next day I would get business. So I really made it my own and I loved it. It wasn't, it wasn't like this gray corporate world that you speak about. It was really our business. And I had a lot of influence on what's happening there, on the people, on the employees, on things that we did together. It was fun. It was fun, but I knew that I needed something more spiritual. I know that it was not my calling to be, in marketing my entire life.
Okay. Well, tell me then about the intersection, because you brought this up, so I'm just going to skip to it. The intersection of spirituality and happiness. What is
Okay.
it? Could you describe it? How
Of course.
do they intersect?
So, some people would say that happiness is only meaning and purpose, right? It's, from Aristotle, 2,500 years ago, spoke about eudaimonia, which is the meaning and purpose of life, is happiness. The other side, the other will tell you that happiness is about enjoyment, is about pleasure, is the hedonistic. We believe that happiness lies in the intersection between between joy and pleasure and meaning. And when you find meaning, when you find a purpose to your life, this is really spiritual life. I mean, when I talk about spirituality, I don't talk about, looking for the meaning of life or looking for something very altruistic, but I'm talking about finding meaning in my life that I already live. This is spiritual. When you feel that you matter, when you feel that you belong, when you feel that like when you go to nature and you are present in your life, this is really spirituality. And this is one of the elements that make you happy.
Mhm.
One out of 5 elements that make you happy.
What are the other four? I feel like I'm giving you a quiz.
No. You won't know that. We talk about um, we talk about the Spire model, which says that if you want to be happy, you will need to do it in an indirect way. Because people that try to pursue happiness directly, in a very paradoxical way, they're unhappy. They're lonelier, they're more depressed. Those people that always look for happiness workshop and they want to be happy. They're not very happy. So the way to become happy, it's almost like looking at the sun. If you want to enjoy the light, you can't look directly at the sun. It's going to burn your eyes. You need to look through some prism. Same thing here. If you want to be happy, you can't look directly at happiness. You need to do it through in an indirect way. So this is the model that we call it the Spire model, and it says that there are 5 elements that if you elevate your well-being in one or all of them, you will be happier. S is the spiritual. You started with that. You didn't even know. So S is the spiritual well-being.
Mhm.
P is the physical well-being, which talks about mind-body connection, about how do we handle stress, how do we, eating healthier, exercising, sleeping better, all these things. I is the intellectual well-being, which talks about curiosity, about learning, about how do we learn from our own failure. The R of the Spire model is the relationship, which is the number one predictor of happiness, and it's the relationship with oneself and with others. And the E is the emotional well-being, which talks about acceptance. How do I accept all my feelings and experiencing pleasurable emotions? Of course, gratitude is one of them. So when you look at the model, if you are eating healthier and you exercise, or if you find meaning in your job, you're happier. You didn't wake up in the morning to say, "Oh, I want to be happier today," but you elevated your well-being in those elements. This is what we teach.
My apologies for interrupting the program today, but I need to tell you about a course that I offer called Aphrodite's Secret. This course helps you overcome obstacles in your sex life. It helps you discover new forms of sexual expression and improve the relationship you're in or improve your skills for the next relationship you're in. This is Valentine's Day, and I have the course on sale from $347 down to $99. But you do have to purchase it this week, Valentine's Day, up until the 17th, 2024, to purchase the sale price. Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Do you find people more lost, more sad, more just without purpose?
Yes, I think it was a major event, the COVID, and people are just trying, starting to get out of it. But in one way, they were much lonelier. We were touching each other. By the way, one of the things we always say is to give a hug, to hug, to touch people. We didn't do that. We didn't see people. Loneliness. People were very lonely. On the other hand, they went more inside. When you can go outside, you go more inside, and they start looking at themselves and finding happiness in smaller things. You know, being more grateful for things. I think changed the way that people were thinking. Once we thought that happiness is outside, is going out and traveling and going to parties and restaurants. And I think COVID made a lot of people realize that the happiness is within us. It's not anywhere else. And maybe it was difficult in the beginning, but I think there was a growth, a real growth after the COVID. We call it anti-fragility, which means it's not just resilience, because resilience is you get back after the crisis to where you were before. Anti-fragility is saying that you can even come higher than before. And I think many people now are in a higher state of acceptance and happiness than they were before the pandemic.
Yeah, I see quite the spectrum of reactions. I know people that are still in a funk. I know people that are lost because they did go inward and now they don't know exactly what they want outward. I've seen people be more creative. Myself, I wrote 2 books during that time. It made me sit down like I was in detention, right? And I had someone else say, I have never gotten closer to my family as during that time because I'd had time off of work and I just could call people up like I never did before. So it's amazing the spectrum of kind of reaction
I know.
and consequences.
I agree. I mean, I actually enjoyed the time of COVID because my kids were home, and and we were having dinners together, and we never had time for that. You always run and run, 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 and we can never stop running unless somebody is stopping it for us. There was no way in the world we could get to where we were if it wasn't a global pandemic. So with all the difficulty, I think it made people much more go back to the basic. A lot of people forgot about it, but at that time we went much more to basic. And I used to do my shopping online, like food shopping. And they brought me, I would ask for chicken, they would make me ice cream. I don't know. And I'm like, okay, fine, we'll work with what we have. Things just lost it's not that important. You get perspective. And Toni, perspective is one of those qualities that make people happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of ice cream, I'm thinking of diets now. And I'm thinking about your book. Right now, I am on a diet. We talked, and I'm in pre-surgery mode, so I'm dieting. And your book, it says you dieted for 45 years. Tell us about your book. What is this about, this dieting for 45 years?
I say in my book that I always believed, truly believed, that what stood between me and pure eternal happiness was 20 pounds. I really did believe it, When I lost the 20 pounds, then I'm going to be so happy. I'm going to wear my skinny jeans and I'm going to tuck my shirt in and blah, blah, blah. And I always was, 20 pounds away from a class reunion or from a wedding, But then I realized, I reached I'm 61 now, and I figured it's not happening. You're 30, 40, 50. You always think next year, next year, next year. And then life just goes by and you miss so many things. And when I look at pictures, I'm like, why did I do it to myself? I wasn't even fat, all in here. But I realized that my 20 pounds are maybe my weight, but everybody has their 20 pounds. Everybody has this something that they believe that stands between them and happiness. And we put our life on hold because of something. When I have enough money, when I can retire, when I get married, when I get divorced, when my kids get married, we always have this something. When I do Ironman, when I buy a house, we always have this something that we believe is going to make us happy. And the book is really not about dieting. I do it because this is my life, but the book is about tools to become happier today, not when, but today. Even if we didn't reach all our goals, we can still be happy. And the book talks about what we call active acceptance, meaning I still want to lose weight. I'm also on some stupid diet. I'm not saying that I'm going to stop trying, but what I'm saying is that it doesn't control my life anymore. It doesn't control the experience of happiness. I'm happy. It would be nice to lose 20 pounds, but I'm happy as I am. And this is what I want people to understand. That's why the subtitle is a practical guide to freedom and happiness, because it's about freedom. And if you look at the picture of you see this?
Mm-hmm.
The picture of the horizontal, it's freedom. For me, happiness is freedom. I want to do whatever I want to do.
That is wonderful. Yeah. I mean, it's so many. I work with women about body image, like their sexual relationships with their mates, and so many people, including myself, are so self-conscious of how we look. And if I only lost 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, then I'll be sexy, and then my mate will love me more. And the reality is your mate loves you now with all of their heart. And the 20 pounds, I might be nice, but it's not the difference between love and not love.
Absolutely. And I keep thinking to myself, I'm not even talking about my husband, who loves me the way I am. And this is when, I wrote my book to my husband who loves me anyway. He does. He doesn't want me to lose weight. He says, what do you want? My parents used to tell me, what's wrong with you? It's not what people say. It's what we're doing to ourselves. This is the problem. And I was thinking to myself one day, will people love me more if I lose weight? Probably not. Probably, of course, not probably, definitely not. So, it's all in our head. And I see sometimes people, that they still think that they were thin when they were young, okay? And they still think they're thin. I mean, it's been years that, since they could wear a size 2. But in their head, they stayed there. And this is the problem. We need to work with our body image and to really love who we are, even though we want to try and change it. I'm not saying we can try and change it, but really love who you are.
Right.
You're not your cellulite.
We're all a work in progress, right? There is no end to the journey, whatever the topic is, right? And I think that's,
No.
I always said, the more I know, the more I know that I don't know, right? That intellectual pursuit, that eye in your prism that you have. And it makes me happy that there's so much more for me to pursue and know, and topics I never thought that I would be reading because it's not in my field per se. So it's
but curiosity actually is connected to longevity. People that are curious, they live longer. I mean, they're happier, but they also live longer. So this excitement about learning something new, about being curious, is something that we should work on. With you, it might be natural. Some people, it's much more difficult to awaken their curiosity. But if they find something that interests them, there must be one thing that you're interested in. You don't need to sit and read a book if you don't like it. You can go to nature. Hiking is learning. You can watch basketball if you like sports. You can do things that make you think and that you learn. It's very important for our lives.
Right. And, one of the things of the many things that really fascinated me about your book was not only is it about freedom and happiness, it's your life story woven through it, but you also have recipes So if the book's really not about dieting, why recipes in the book?
You know, it's funny. I actually came to the idea of recipes once I spoke with years and years ago when it was still in my head. You know, I didn't write it yet. Somebody told me, you put recipes or restaurant names, things that people will keep the book. They will keep it. And that's why I did it. And then I realized that every story can have a recipe connected to it. Now, not all the recipes are serious. Some of them are funny, you know, in a way. You know, when I talk about my experience, you know, with a hypnosis, okay, my recipe is to a Negroni cocktail that you will hypnotize your guests. Or when I talk about my childhood, you know, everything about my childhood, I give the recipe of my mom's meatballs because, you know, she would call me. Because I talk about, see, the book is built in a way, there are 17 chapters. Each chapter talks about one thing that has to do with my life or my diet. And from there, I go to an insight from the positive psychology and happiness world. And then I give one page of, you know, of self-exercise and a recipe. So let's take an example of my childhood. When I talk about those Saturday nights, you know, the weekend that I know we start by tomorrow, you know, when we would like eat the entire fridge, and then I would tell myself, oh my God, I'm such a cow. From there, I go to self-compassion, self-love. How do we talk to ourselves the way that you would never talk to a friend that you like? Why do we do it to ourselves? So I talk about self-love. I do exercise with self-love, and I give the meatballs that my mother used to you know, to feed me. And she says, oh, Tami, like, come on, you had a very difficult day, have something. And I'm like, why can't I tell this to myself? So every chapter has a story, an insight, you know, work and recipe. That's the way it's built.
It's great. I can't wait for it to come out in English so that I could tell my friends to buy a copy. I got to see a copy in English, and it's really good. It's a fantastic book. Thank you for sharing it with us. I'll have the link underneath the podcast so that people can find it and your information. Tami, I have a feeling your career is not coming to an end. That it's just a chapter ready to soar to the next level. What is next for Tami Muller?
Oh, I don't know. We have to ask the universe. But I think what I would like to do is to continue, you know, influencing people, releasing them from their prison, making them a little happier, making the life lighter. I mean, the life is difficult today. I mean, look what's happening in the world. I mean, you know, if you can bring a little humor, and by the way, the book has a lot of humor. It's funny. And I think that humor, if you really, you know, you can reach people like that. So if I could go and, you know, and talk to people and teach them and give lectures and do workshops and do retreats, I would love to do it. I'm planning to actually translate the book to Spanish and French and many other languages, Chinese. And, you know, I think any person in the world can relate somehow to the subject. That's really what I want to do.
Fantastic. Well, on your tour around the world speaking, I'll be there too. So I'll wave to you as I'm going out of France and you're going into France and vice versa. And
this will be great.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to doing a few things with you if the universe will be cooperative. Tami, I cannot believe that we are at the end of our program already. And
so fast?
I know it goes so fast all the time. What would you say to our audience as some words of wisdom, some words to live by, something before they grab your book, something that they could hang on to before they grab the book and have many words of wisdom?
No. Well, I didn't plan on that, but I'll tell you what I think. You know, at the end of the day, it's all about, you know, nothing extreme. Don't go crazy. Don't beat yourself up. Life is beautiful. You know, be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for the simple things around you. Know how to appreciate what we already have. And, you know, and at the end of the book, I write that I once heard a story. It's called the Rock in Buddha's Garden. And, you know, which means you can't have everything beautiful like Buddha's garden. You know, something has to be a little bit, you know, the rock, one rock. So I say, if this is my rock, I'm going to live with that. That's fine. You know, if everything else around me is, I'm happy with everything else. So I have 20 pounds. We all have to embrace the little and live together, coexisting with our little monster. We all have a little monster. We need to embrace it, live with it. Some days it will be more difficult, some days it will be less. But if we can just look around and say, wow, you know, I'm so grateful for what I have. And Toni, you know, for me, taking life for granted is the opposite of being grateful. And I would just tell everybody, don't take your life for granted. Nothing is for granted. You know, nothing is for granted. Know how to appreciate every little thing that you have. And we all have a lot around us to appreciate. This is really what I would tell you. You know, you have 10 pounds less, you have another $1 million less. It's okay, you know, but just learn how to appreciate what you have.
Well, Tami, thank you so much for being on our program today. I'm going to take my gratefulness and go forward and enjoy the world, even though there's a lot of parts of me that are not perfect, nor will they ever be.
And you know what? You don't want them to be. Somebody once told me, do you like anybody perfect? No, I don't. There's a chapter in the book about the wabi-sabi and my gifts of imperfection, like Brené Brown is calling them. I don't want to be perfect. That's perfectly fine. But if I can end and give one little tip, speaking about gratitude to, you know, to our people who are listening to us, if you can write every night before you go to sleep, 5 things that you're grateful for. Go over your day. Think, what is it that you can be grateful for today? It has a huge impact. This is the lowest hanging fruit of becoming happier. And it's been researched and researched and over-researched. 5 things every night that you're grateful for. You'll see the big difference in your life.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Toni.
And thank you to the audience for listening in. We'll see you next week.